This is fun. I'm really excited to talk to you. I have had a couple of public speaking coaches or people in that realm on, and it's super fun. I'm fascinated with it, particularly because I host a podcast. I'm talking to people all the time, and I'm trying to find ways to improve. And I've heard you talk specifically about exposure therapy logic and how it doesn't always apply to public speaking. Tell me more about that.
Yes. Okay. So it's like, okay, I have a fear of heights, which I actually think I'm going to dedicate some time to getting over. I come from Saskatchewan, Canada, which is the flattest place on earth. The joke is that you can watch your dog run away for 5 days. So I like heights haven't really come up for me. And so now I'm trying to like expose myself to them more so that I can get used to it. And that's a situation where exposure therapy will work, where you're changing the association with being somewhere high up with danger, right? And so I'm working on that. But the thing about it is that it's private. Whereas when you're public speaking, it's a very obviously public thing that you do. And when you have nerves or some fear or trepidation about public speaking, the way that your nervous system operates to keep you safe and to protect you from this threat of speaking, it interferes with your ability to actually do it. And so that's why exposure therapy doesn't necessarily work for public speaking, is because then you get up there and your voice is shaking and your mind goes blank, and sometimes you can't even remember what you said when you get off stage, and you feel like you didn't represent yourself well and you feel embarrassed. And so as opposed to, I go to a children's play center where you go up and high and like climb and like walk around on logs and you're harnessed in, and I'm having my own private panic attacks and I'm getting over my fear of heights because I come down and go, okay, if I was safe, nothing bad happened to me, this is a good experience that I could chalk up. People come off the stage with public speaking and they go, that was horrible. And so your brain that already sees it as a threat sees it as even more of a threat.
So you get exposed to this public speaking and your hope is, okay, I'm going to just get more exposure and it's going to go well. And then the next time it will be a little bit easier. But you get up there and everything that you fear maybe doesn't come true. But like you're saying, your throat's dry, you're nervous, you start to sweat. Oh no, people are going to see my pit stains. I'm stumbling over my words, likes, ands. And then you come off and instead of feeling that reinforcement that you didn't die, that it'll be better next time, you're like, oh no, this actually did go as bad as I thought it might, or things weren't super easy, and then that reinforces a cycle for the next time you worry about it more and more. How do we overcome that?
Okay, great. So I'm like already ready to jump in. So what happens there is that then you're not just fearing public speaking, because you made such a great point. The things that we think are going to happen to us when we're public speaking do not happen. They're so incredibly rare. Like even if you had one of those moments where you froze up or blanked and had to run off stage, people most likely wouldn't judge you, or the majority of people wouldn't. They would actually feel a lot of compassion for you. So the actual things we think may happen and that we fear usually don't come true. But we get a really real fear of our fear. So we start fearing how we are going to react. And we also lose a sense of control over the experience, because you can't trust your body to behave in a way that makes sense to you or that you have some sense of control over. So how we get over that, it's the same thing. I mean, I hate to say it, but the only way out is through. But you approach it differently. So you have tools and you have resources that you use, and you create the different experience of it through internal process. And it's interesting because you had a sports psychologist on here, and I know that you're into sports or athletics, and I think that if anybody who does sport is so well suited to start changing their process for public speaking as well, because it's a lot of the same mental skills.
What would be, I mean, before we dive into some of those things to correct that and improve our ability to public speak, who's it for? Is improving our public speaking only for public speakers? Or what would be the benefit of everybody to learn how to speak better?
I rarely work with people who stand and deliver keynotes. That's not really who I help. I obviously can, and I do keynote speeches all the time. I help people who in their day-to-day profession are asked to speak in front of other people, and you wouldn't believe the breadth of the people that I work with. Like it is people in tech, in law, chiropractors, teachers, professors, like the most weird jobs in like health and sales, like everything. Like there's so many people I meet, I'm like, I didn't know that was a job, but speaking is part of it. And so I help professionals who have a fear of public speaking that's holding them back from taking the next step in their career. So that's who I help. But it's I'm almost everybody will be called upon to do some form of public speaking in their life.
There's just something powerful about people who are confident in their voice and what they have to say. Like it doesn't matter whether it is a keynote or just you're talking to a friend or somebody at the surf. Like they can speak with confidence, meet good eye contact. They use confident language. They're not stuttering and stumbling over their ums and ahs. It's you just have so much more authority and so much more conviction as a listener to that person.
Yes. And I want, like, let me build off that because what we think of when we think of a good public speaker, the first image we go to is a really outdated idea of what public speaking is. So we'll often go to someone who is standing very upright, speaking in a very powerful voice with, prescribed gestures and who's often like quite emotionless or lacks flavors of personality. So we'll think of that as that's the standard. But that standard was developed decades ago and it has been mimicked and repeated for so long, despite the fact that it is stuffy and no longer appeals to the modern audience. So what we actually want and what actually engages an audience is someone who can speak in a conversational tone and someone who can look someone in the eyes and try to communicate an idea to them and care about the person's experience who is listening. And when we can do that, that is one of those people that you're talking about who is so engaging and so it's so powerful when they do it. I think one of the most powerful things that you can do in the world is stand in front of a group of people and be unaffected by their gaze.
Is is that the same? Can you speak the same way in that big public setting as you can with somebody like one-on-one, or is that a different type of conversational skill set?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. With throughout our day and our lives, we change the way that we speak. We're both speaking differently here than we do with our loved ones. I used to work for CBC Radio and they're very big in Canada, but I'm sure you know it. And if I spoke the way that I used to speak when I would host CBC to my sister, she would be like, "Who are you?" And if I spoke on CBC the way I spoke to my sister, I wouldn't have had a job anymore. Too casual, too relaxed. Not a lot of people would connect to it, right? I have to have a lot of clarity. So I think there is some natural adaptation, but what there doesn't have to be is a complete removal of personality and who you are. A lot of public speakers suffer from the suddenly not good enough syndrome. So I meet you one-on-one. We talk about public speaking. I'm so excited. I'm engaged. I'm enjoying this conversation. And then I get in front of a crowd and suddenly my ideas aren't good. Suddenly I don't really know what I'm talking about, even though I just had this really passionate conversation with you. So who I am and the ideas that I have, when they're good enough in that one-on-one, they're good enough to share with a large group of people. And yeah, you may have to adjust your behavior slightly. Often you have to be more energized and you have to be more clear, but you don't have to change who you are.
That's a really interesting point because I mean, I suffer from that not good enough syndrome. I've done,
Yes.
let's just take fitness and nutrition, something I've been doing since I was like 12. I know a lot about it because I've done a lot of it. I've researched a lot of it.
Mhm.
And as soon as somebody comes up and asks me for advice, I'm like, okay, perfect. Like this is what we need to do. Let's get some more information. We'll talk about, calories in versus calories out, daily expenditure, progressive overload, all that fun stuff. And then if you put me in front of a group of people, I'm like, what do I have to offer here? How can I talk about
Mhm.
this? How do we switch that mindset?
Yeah, I mean, all of a sudden, collectively, once people become a collective, they know more than you, right? Well, one of the things is I think to switch that mindset in particular, you have to think, well, what is it that that's preventing me from feeling confident in this idea? And most likely it's that someone will go, Chase, you don't know what you're talking about. Like you fear that, someone might stand up or that the information might be like too low down for them. Like we're past what you're sharing with us. We want to go into more detail or nuance. And you can get around both those things by just switching your mindset or switching your preparation. So for myself, like I present on public speaking a lot to a variety of audiences. And what I, plus I post online about it all the time. And what got me over my self-consciousness is that I never really even thought of myself this way, but I don't think of myself as an expert in public speaking. I think of myself as someone who is incredibly curious about public speaking. And in that way, it protects me from having some type of ego about it or having a fixed mindset where someone presents me with information that I haven't considered, that I have to reject that information because it doesn't match my experience. Whereas if I think I'm curious about it, when someone presents me with a new idea, I can think, oh, I haven't thought about that before. Like now when I reflect on what I know and I put that in the mix. So if you just start thinking about yourself as curious, then you, in a way, become impenetrable. The other thing is that you're also an expert. If you are going to be an expert, you're an expert in your own experience. So if you've helped people with fitness or if you helped yourself with fitness, I've helped hundreds of people with public speaking. I've helped myself get over the fear of public speaking. I'm an expert in that experience. So
Mm.
all I'm doing is sharing what I know to be true for me, and people can take that or not. And then if it goes to the other one where you're worried that it's too high level, I think a lot of that is about alignment of audiences. And so just being very clear with who you're attracting to events. Like you never want to bait and switch people into coming to a talk of yours or anything like that. But I've experienced that with corporations because I have a very I'm going to say it's pretty touchy-feely way of getting people over their fear of public speaking. But that appeals to so many people. But if somebody says, Heather, you come in and you come to this corporation and talk to these 30 people, they haven't had any touch points with me. And here I am coming being like, let's reflect on our belief system and how it interferes with our ability. I don't feel confident that they're going to receive that well. And so that often makes me experience some self-doubt. So now when I get booked by a corporation, I do a lot of pre-evaluation qualifying before I accept the opportunity because I don't want any of us to feel uncomfortable.
Mm. I like what you said about being like a curious learner for public speaking. I get asked all the time or commented by my friends like, I don't know how you come up with questions on the fly or like, do you pre-script these questions or whatever when I'm doing the podcast? But I realize a different mindset when I'm doing a podcast versus like if I'm speaking, and I should kind of merge those because it's easy to come up with questions because I'm sitting here listening to you talk and I'm curious about what you have to say. I guess it's just a conversation, but I've never thought about bringing that kind of mindset to talking with other people or public speaking, kind of being like, yeah, I have an authority here because I've gone through it, or this is my experience and I'm curious about it. So I'm going to have addressed a lot of these questions or whatnot, or be open to saying, oh, I don't know, or I haven't thought about that when other people bring questions that I may not know.
And let me tell you what you're doing that is less of a mindset and more of a skill that you can transfer over to public speaking, which is when you're doing this podcast, you're not doubting yourself. And so you're not having any thoughts come into your mind of, oh no, what if I can't think of anything to say? Or what if Heather doesn't think I'm smart? Or Heather doesn't think I'm asking the good questions? Or what if the audience doesn't like the sound of my voice? You're not thinking any of those things. And I hope I'm not truly,
Well,
you
now
are
I am.
great. Like I'm not but those would be examples of what someone who is self-conscious would think, right? So what you're doing is you're keeping your working memory free to listen to me. And that allows you to use your working memory to listen, analyze the information, and come up with ideas for what to speak. So it's the same when we're speaking, is that when we have intrusive thoughts, or when we have negative self-talk, or we have self-doubt, and that is in our mind when we're speaking. If we're thinking, oh, this audience doesn't like me, that gets into our working memory. Our working memory can only hold a small amount of information at once. And in order for a thought to come in, the previous thought must leave. So it's when you're having these thoughts about your own ability, they're constantly pushing out what you need to be talking about. So you have created a container for yourself where you trust yourself and your mind is free and clear when you're listening and you're hosting these podcasts. And you can do the same thing for yourself when you're public speaking.
How did you get into this? I know you have a background in theater, but what led that to public speaking and helping people in this area?
I was afraid of public speaking myself. So, which is funny because I was an actress and I was fine
Mm-hmm.
on stage in front of hundreds of people as a character. But I had this funny thing happen to me where literally a man came up to me and handed me his card in a crowd and was like, I think you have a voice for radio. And I ended up working at this radio station, which was like pretty cool. And I didn't mind that either, having like a mic and no one could see me and I could be myself. But then what they do is they send you out to MC events in the community. And so suddenly I was in front of audiences of 600 to 1,000 people and I was supposed to be myself. And it just totally ruined my life because it was once a week that I would have to do these things. I wouldn't sleep the night before. The whole day at work was a write off. When I was there, I wouldn't be able to have conversations with anyone beforehand because I'd be like, my mind would be buzzing. And I was just emceeing. It's not like I was doing these 1 hour talks, but I would literally be like, thank you for everybody for supporting the Canadian National Institute of the Blind. We're here to celebrate them. That's all I was expected to do. And I was just stressing so hard. And the worst part was how I felt about myself. It really eroded my self-esteem. I would walk away afterwards thinking like, that wasn't me. How come on the radio I can be so funny and I can feel so free? But at these events, I almost don't even remember what I say because my mind was blanking so much.
Mm. What do you think it was that was the difference between acting, radio, and then doing these more public events that cause you to feel that
100%.
analysis paralysis?
100% it was being seen because it wasn't associated with me when I was speaking on the radio and when I was acting, I was a character, but now all of a sudden people could see me. I read about this
Mm,
really cool psychological theory from Dr. Ellen Hendrickson. And I would say if anybody's struggling with social anxiety, her book, How to Be Yourself, is really excellent. And one of the concepts in it is this idea of the reveal. So when we experience social anxiety, it's often because we think that we're at risk for behaving in a way that will reveal to others our deepest, darkest fears about ourselves. So if you feel incompetent or you feel unlovable or whatever it is, public speaking can often feel a real threat that's going to come to the surface. So a lot of people have imposter syndrome in their work, but they're able to get through it in so many different areas. But then when it comes to public speaking, that's the one that gets them.
but that's really interesting. I mean, we've kind of been building on this, and it's definitely something I've experienced. Like when I want to improve the podcast, improve the show, like I try to immerse myself with people who have done that or do that. Like, you have great
Mhm.
podcast hosters, you have great, interviewers and things like that. And when I listen to these people, some are younger than me, some are older than me, it's very much like, oh my goodness, they are so good. How can I get that good? Or will I ever be that good? And then you have that sense of imposter syndrome of yourself. It's like, well, they have this whole production, they have this big team. Why should I continue? They're already there. They're already doing it. And you get this sense of just like we were saying, imposter syndrome, that you can't provide the same value that they can, or you can't get to that level. Why try?
And so how have you gotten around that?
Ooh, that has been, uh,
Or should we work through it? We can work through it.
no, I think it's come from just like with the podcast. It's very nice because I post twice a week, and I can see actionably now, like concretely, I am better than I was on episode 1. And so I
Mhm.
have
Mhm.
that line of improvement. And so logically, I'm able to say, okay, if I have this many episodes, once I double this, I should continue to be better. And so I have kind of that concrete proof that I am improving and it will get better.
And one of the hardest things to do is to be a beginner. And so you've actually done something that's incredibly noble already, which is just starting and trying. That should already be a inspiration enough for people to value what you're doing. That's obviously a great mindset. Sorry, my brain's going in like 100 different directions here. But I'm really stuck on this idea of why not you? Why can't it be
Mm.
you? Do soccer players go, "Oh, somebody's already really good. I guess I'll just stop because this person is also really good at it." Like I don't really think in other industries that's the way we think. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, imposter syndrome often isn't logical. I think that's something that people need to
Yes,
be
good point,
aware
good
of.
point.
It's often not logical. It's often just that inner fear,
Mhm.
that inner dialogue that our lizard brain is just telling us to be comfortable. And one other thing that I've been doing is like that lack of comfort, like that feeling of discomfort that I get when I do this or when I do other things
Mm.
is kind of a confirmation signal that I use now instead that I'm like on the right path versus like, oh no, you shouldn't do this. I'm like, oh, I should do this. It's pushing me outside my boundaries. It's making me grow. And so just kind of having that awareness that this isn't logical and it's okay that it feels a little uncomfortable. It's okay that it feels a little weird. That just means you're growing.
That is such great advice. Like, that is such a great way to think about things. When you were, speaking there, I was thinking about discomfort that comes from doing something that's really challenging or hard versus discomfort, because something is actually wrong, and having the self-awareness to know which is the good hard and which is the hard that should actually just leave your life. So I think even there just shows incredible self-awareness.
So people listening to this, they're like, okay, we've covered that it's okay to feel a little bit weird going into it. What would be step one for improving your public speaking in terms of something that people could do actionably today, tomorrow, this week, and then maybe more of a long term, like you need to start practicing this and changing the way you think?
Mhm. Okay. The first place I would start is just making sure that you recognize that public speaking is a skill. It is not a talent. So remove this idea when you see people that are good at it that they were born that way. They were not. They have put in a lot of effort. Maybe whatever happened to them in their childhood allowed them to be naturally a little bit better at it to begin with, or maybe it came a little bit easier to them, but that doesn't mean you can't catch up. There's so many famous speakers that talk about their discomfort and their growth. There's a lot of people just even, I mean, you wouldn't believe the people that I work with. I work with people, I work with CEOs. I worked with a doctor that teaches at Harvard. Like, there are just so many different people that are high level that struggle with this. So I guess that would be the other thing is it's not something to be ashamed of. It's a really, really common problem. And it doesn't take away from your own success or competency at your job. Doing your job and speaking about what you do at your job are two different skills. And it's okay if you lack this skill set. So, like, removal of judgment. The next place that I would start working on, probably the easiest way to move the needle right off the top, is you got to probably prepare a lot more than you're preparing. So, because a
Mm.
lot of people who fear public speaking are avoiding it. And I compare it to people who think they can just go out and run a marathon and then it goes badly. And they're like, gee, I guess I'm bad at marathons. Like, that's not, you know, try fueling and running a few times a week before you try it out. So you can probably prepare a lot more. And then the next step would be having those really honest conversations with yourself about what you believe about yourself and how can you do like you did, how can you do that switch from, oh, I feel so far behind to I can see that I'm growing every show and I know I'm going to continue to get better. That's a belief system shift. And our beliefs have to support us when we are public speaking, but also just examining that self talk. As I mentioned to you earlier, when it's coming into your mind, if you're on a podcast or um, when you're speaking in front of other people, if you have those negative self talk thoughts, then they're going to interfere with your ability. So even if you
Mm.
prepare all you want, if you're sitting there going, I sound like an idiot right now, you're not going to be able to speak as articulately if those thoughts aren't there. So, practicing self compassion and practicing more supportive self talk in your day to day life will actually help you in public speaking as well. And the bonus is that it just feels really good. It just feels
Yeah.
really good.
I want to address the preparation before we do the self-talk. What
Hmm.
do we mean by preparation? So is it like rehearsing it, scripting it out, and like saying it word for word? What do you mean by preparation?
Hmm. Okay, it's different. So, great question, and it's different for everybody. So, it's not like a formula. It's like if you ask me,
Hmm.
what length of rope do you need? I'd be like, whatever, like would serve the job. But there are a few things I could say, which is scripting something and then memorizing it to the point where it appears natural is practic. You're doubling your workload for sure. So I would only recommend that in incredibly important situations. So a huge presentation to the board or a TED Talk or a speech at your friend's wedding. That's when I would think that those things would be worth the time and effort. If you're doing a presentation to your peers, writing out every single word and reading it or memorize, trying to memorize it and speak it, you're most likely going to come across as really wooden. So my favorite way to prepare is to actually just make jot notes, kind of get my ideas clear of what I want to touch on, and then practice speaking it out loud because the spoken word, the written word are two different things. And then if I was short on time, I would just make sure to triple, quadruple practice the beginning because that's when you're going to be most nervous. And that's when you haven't really settled in. So it's going to be the most clunky. And then I would make sure to practice the ending really well so I could send people off with a good impression too.
That's w the only thing I script on this podcast are like the ad reads on in the middle and or
Yeah.
correction. The only thing I have tried scripting is the ad reads. It's so much worse when they're scripted versus when I just have like bullet points of these are the things I can hit. Because if I script it or I try to
Hmm.
do it once and then I go through it and I'm like, oh, I stumbled over this word. And then I'm thinking about it the whole time. And now I'm stumbling over all the words and it just gets progressively worse and worse. Now it's just bullet points and I'm just like, okay, hit these, just have a have a conversation. Scripting is so hard.
It's very difficult. And I think in places where, like a political speech or a TED Talk, where every word matters, it's worth it. But if you think about it, like, I mean, I took 4 years of university to learn to be an actor, to learn to memorize and say words as if they're natural. Like, it took me 4 years, right? So I do think it's really hard to do. And so if it's hard for you, that just makes sense. It's a really, really difficult thing to do. And speaking from notes is just a much easier thing to, easier way to come across as natural and more relaxed. The only thing is that a lot of people use a script as a crutch or a way to feel safe when they're public speaking. So it's hard for people to let it go. And if you're one of those people, what I would say is try laddering your way out. So just, or like using, I call it using like scaffolding. So just maybe script some and jot note some. Like maybe you're just introduction. It's going to be jot notes and then you get into the script. Or maybe like there's certain portions where you feel more comfortable off script doing notes and just kind of scale your way back.
With the scripting aspect, because I was listening to somebody yesterday who wanted to do a TED Talk and they got invited to do a TED Talk
Hmm.
and they were talking about their preparation. And I had Miles Usher Doyle, he's a UK speech coach on as well. And he was kind of talking about the curse of the TED Talk, how people watch a TED Talk and they think, oh, this is how I should be as a public speaker, like walking back and forth, doing my hand gestures, being in the spotlight. And they don't realize like they had hours and hours and hours of practicing that specific talk in that specific setting, trying to do that specific thing. Uh, it's just super interesting how we see these TED Talks and we think, oh, they're just a natural public speaker. I want to be like that, versus comparing it to an actual real life setting where, like, if I was in a meeting, I wouldn't have my hand out like this and I wouldn't be walking back and forth and doing that whole thing. Real quick, before we get too deep into this conversation, I wanted to give you guys a peek under the hood when it comes to the data. So the data on this app shows me that less than 21% of my average monthly listeners are actually subscribed to the show. Now, subscribing to the show helps way more than you'd think. It helps the show get pushed out to more people. It helps the show grow. It helps me get more guests. It helps improve the quality. So if you guys like listening to me, and more importantly, like listening to the guests that I'm bringing on, do me a quick favor, hit the subscribe button right here on this app, and we will continue to grow the show bigger and better with each and every episode. Thank you so much.
So the pairing I like to use is realistic and warm. So, when you're feeling nervous before a public speaking event, instead of saying like, it's okay, it's fine, it'll be okay. Like, that sounds positive for sure, but it doesn't actually get in touch with what's going on inside you. So I recommend something more like, I feel nervous. This makes sense. This is a challenge that I'm facing. And so the reaction that I'm having makes sense. I have been nervous before and things have gone well. And so I can hope and assume that I'll be able to manage this challenge as well. You say about 3 times the amount of words, but I think this is actually a way to be in conversation with yourself that does calm the nervous system and allows you to also reframe the situation in a way that makes it feel more manageable.
It's easy to say, especially with like these mindset things. Like, I was talking to Dr. Alex Core, who was a neuroscientist, and I was bringing up, like, the nice thing about physical habits is, like, you can actionably, like, make them easier or
Mm,
harder. Like, I can stop eating cookies by not buying cookies and not having them in the house for when I'm getting hungry. But it's harder to make these mental changes because the friction is so low. Like, you and the habits are so ingrained. So are there any tools or any situations that you are giving your students or your clients to actually allow them to make the changes when it's happening? Because it's also super easy to do it after the fact. Like, oh my goodness, I was in this situation. It would have been the perfect time to practice that skill or do that new
mm.
habit, but it just slipped by because I'm so ingrained in my old habits.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's what a good point. That's the thing about beliefs is that they often feel like truths because our beliefs are practiced thoughts. We've thought them so many times that they feel like they're truths. But there's this great quote. Oh, geez, I can't remember who wrote it, but it's our beliefs are hypotheses to be tested, not treasures to be guarded. So we actually, if you come from this place of curiosity of I never actually know myself or I never know anything, then it opens everything up to examination, which I find is helpful. But specifically with public speaking, I think what's helpful is to write down those beliefs that are constantly getting in your way. And you mentioned this earlier, so I'll just bring it up now, is that it most likely actually won't be logical. But don't dismiss it because it's not. So if you believe that, if deep down you have a thought that nobody likes to listen to you, when you go to write it down, don't say, well, that's dumb. I know that's not true. But it is something that you are going to have to deal with because it's coming up for you. So in one column, I want you to write all your beliefs that are getting in your way, which is, um, they can be like, people don't like me or they don't like what I have to say or I have nothing original to say. It can be stuff like that. But you should also challenge beliefs that, like, if I get nervous, people will think I'm not good at my job. That's a belief. That's not a truth. If something goes wrong, I'm unprofessional. That's also a belief. That's not a truth. And you get those all in one column. And then what you want to do is create an opposites column. So you create an opposite thought that is also true. So a really easy example is I'm bad at public speaking can become public speaking is a skill that I'm working on. Both of those can be true, but one motivates you to work on it and calms your nervous system down.
That reframing aspect, it seems to be a reoccurring theme in the people I've been speaking to recently. Um, I was watching, I don't know, have you watched Shrinking on Apple TV?
No, it's been recommended to me many times though.
Okay, it's like the best show ever. It's so good. It's so good. But Harrison Ford character, and it just makes me think of this. He brings up this concept of the field. He's like this all-knowing, whatever you want to call it, but
Mm.
it's like when you need something, you will be constantly presented with the world telling you that thing. It's just like, confirmation bias. So I've been implementing that reframing and that journaling and that writing aspect recently,
Mhm.
and even within just 10 days of me doing it, I just hit day 10 or 11 of me doing it every single morning. It's been profoundly impactful on myself. And because I think a lot of people, especially males, don't know how to name what they're feeling, or they don't think about that often. Like I certainly don't. Like I would be feeling a certain way, and it wasn't until I started journaling that I was like, oh, I actually feel sad, or I actually feel angry, or I actually feel lonely. And it's not just this jumble of anxiety that you often think
Mhm.
that it is. And so by journaling, I've been able to identify what I'm feeling and put words to it. And then B, by reframing those thoughts, I'm actually able to identify them more and behave more logically on them instead of just enacting on them as my base instincts, thinking that they're just bad.
That's great. I love to hear that. I think you're right. Or I've heard that frequently from men. I one client I heard I had would do this thing where we talk about you examine your self-talk for a week and then we talk about it in class. And he's like, I don't. I just don't talk to myself. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then at the end of class, he's like, okay, so I do. It's just that the thoughts just seem like he's naming what's happening. But the
Mhm.
big aha moment for him was that he used to, whenever he would present, he would feel like the audience was hostile, like against him. And he realized it actually came from he used to just have this really combative and competitive coworker that was always in the room when he would present. And so he'd taken that relationship and started just made it his schema for whenever he presented. It was like, this is what audiences are like. And he realized, oh, that's something I'm creating actually with my mind. But I love that you're doing this in your life. And here's the thing is that we can often have successes using certain mental skills in one area of our life, and then we can transfer them over to public speaking. So if there's anywhere that you have been able, like I'm speaking to your audience now, if there's anywhere that you have been able to do a reframe, then you can do reframes for public speaking. You've proven to yourself that it works and you know how to commit to it. And it's interesting because I'm very comfortable in front of audiences. I'm very comfortable public speaking now, but there's lots of areas of my life that are like a total mess. And my self talk is so bad. One of them being parenting. I find that I'm really hard on myself about my parenting. And I have this way of recognizing when I am because I have like my internal negative self talk. I call it the hammer. So I'll be like, oh, the hammer's coming down and I'm getting flooded. But sometimes I don't even recognize that that's what it is. I just think, I am a bad parent. It's not okay to get stressed out. It's not okay to get irritated. And I don't use all the tools that I know how to use in a public speaking setting. So being able to examine your life for, where am I using these successfully or where am I needing to transfer these over, you can just start swapping. And actually, sorry, I know I've been talking for like 2 minutes straight here, but I wanted to say you had Dr. Chris Winter on your podcast, and he saved my sleep. So I hope everybody listens to that podcast and buys his book because it truly I used to be a terrible sleeper. I read his book and now I sleep very well. And the core concept that he teaches you, which I won't go into too detail because people could just listen to that podcast, is that when you can't fall asleep, you stop, you don't hang on to it. You don't latch onto it as something's wrong because basically you train yourself to start doing that. And that's the same thing with public speaking. You can take that skill of learning how to sleep better and you can apply it to public speaking with it, which is, if something goes wrong, no, it didn't. Like
Mhm.
things are supposed to go wrong. Like that's just, you make a mistake. Oh, you're public speaking. Everybody makes mistakes when they're public speaking and you just move on. You don't develop that strong attachment that ramps up your anxiety. But those skills are everywhere in our life and we can just start calling them in.
Dr. Winter and I talked about, and I think it applies here because you just brought it up, but the fragility of over optimization. That's kind of what I brought up, like, because we were talking
Yes.
about sleep, and I've always been super into sleep, but I over optimized it to the point that not it became worse, because I was like, okay, I was like, my
Mm,
temperature in my home needs to be cooled down. I need my sleep to be cooled down. I need to have my phone off 2 hours before bed. I need to have my blue light blocking glasses. I need to be reading a fiction book. I need my eye mask. I need my mouth
mm.
tape. I need my nasal strip. And so, like,
And
all
then it's
of
like,
these
Chase,
things.
do you want to go camping? No, I can't. I couldn't possibly.
Exactly. Exactly. So if like my routine is even remotely altered now, it's like, oh my goodness, the night is ruined. I can't sleep.
Right.
And so even though I'm doing one of those things would improve my sleep, by doing all of them and by caring so much, it then became worse and more fragile, versus my wife, who is like the best sleeper ever. She'll get into bed and turn over and just like plonk right out and doesn't do any of
Hmm.
this stuff. And I've like over optimized that. And so what I realized is, like, by taking it seriously, but also taking myself too seriously, it was a negative. And so if I can then take the situation seriously, but not take myself too seriously, like public speaking, like, I'm going to
Hmm.
prepare, I want to be good at it, and that's okay. But I'm a human. I'm going to make mistakes. And so by like not having that over optimization outlook, I'm going to perform so much better.
Yeah. Okay. I love that you said that because that's, um, like, I'm an optimizer too. I listen to all those podcasts. I try all those tricks as well. And it was so freeing for me to let go of this idea that I could actually get my life to a place where I wouldn't have challenges or difficulties. Like, I just kept thinking, no, there must be an optimization. And part of it was actually like, there's often these big reveal articles or there's things that come out about the people that teach optimization. You realize that their life is actually a mess. Like, they're
Yeah.
not actually living what they prescribe anyways. So um, yes, I love that you said that, and I had a thought about public speaking. Oh, yes, okay. So that is one of the things then that you do need to take into consideration is you can't really get to this place where public speaking is not a challenge or hard work. You can get to a place like right now, I can pretty much say yes to anything. Sorry, to a certain level. I still have yet to go to like multiple thousands speaking out public speaking. Those would be the next steps for me. But I've worked my way up. I feel pretty calm and confident when I do things, but that doesn't mean I don't have to put in a lot of effort. And that doesn't mean that I don't face some stress or have to work with some nerves or have to work with some self-talk or self-doubt sometimes. Like it's more about you have the tools and skills to manage it as opposed to that it's gone. And anybody who is I'm a ultra runner too. Though I feel like now people are trying to take that away from people who did 50Ks. That's as far as I've gone. They're like, that's not really ultra marathon.
It is.
Um,
It's over a marathon.
but
It's
yeah,
ultra.
but it's like, could you expect to train for that or do it? Could you expect to do it and have it not be hard? Like, that's unreasonable. And if it's not hard for you, you're Courtney DeWalter. So
Yeah.
go win. So go win a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. And I mean, Courtney, she's just a different. I think what makes her so good, and to relate this to public speaking, is like she talks about her pain cave and how, like, when she's in there, she embraces the fact that it sucks, and she literally thinks about like chiseling away at the cave and making it bigger
Mhm.
and making herself like more comfortable in a larger space within that pain cave. And do you think that has like that theory is applicable to like public speaking, like we were talking before, like good bad versus bad, like having that mindset, like, okay, this is a good bad, like, it's okay that I'm uncomfortable, it's okay that I'm nervous, I'm just chiseling out my cave, I'm just making it a little
Mhm.
bit bigger.
Yeah. Okay. So where I think that would come down to is that the root of the word confidence actually, um, it's with trust. That's what the word confidence means. And I think what Courtney is developing there is trust in herself to manage the challenge of it. Because then it becomes this challenge becomes familiar and she also recognizes that she's safe. And in that way also she keeps it in the realm of challenge as opposed to threat. So if people are interested in this, there's a lot of research on this by a researcher. Her name's Dr. Kelly McGonigal, and her book's The Upside of Stress. But it talks about how we view what we're doing. If we view it as a threat, we have a different response in our body than a challenge. And when we go, most people in public speaking are in threat response, which is really, really hard to manage. It's much easier to manage a challenge response in your body. But I think that when we take on that challenge and we're able to remain calm ish and we're able to use our tools and resources and skills to get through it and have a fairly positive outcome, we build that trust within ourselves and we're able to take on something that may be just slightly out of reach with trust. So, with confidence that we can manage it. And I think that that's also ultimately what she's doing. And that's what we're doing with public speaking when we go into public speaking, we approach it differently, when we calm our nervous system, when we talk to ourselves well, when we believe things that support us and we're prepared properly, we have a different experience and we gain that trust that we can manage this challenge.
Yeah. That reminds me a lot, like, same thing with, like, flow state. Like, we get in the flow state when it's challenges enough that we are not having to do it unconsciously, but not so challenging that we have to, like, think about our exact movements, and it's kinda in that flow where we start to thrive. So, if somebody hasn't spoken, you wouldn't recommend, "Hey, go try to get on a TED Talk," or "Go try to do this." You'd say, "Try to find the next level, something that can push you outside of your comfort zone." What would be some things that people can what are some situations people can get themselves into to practice that every day?
Yeah. Great. I mean, great question. In a way, I almost wouldn't want to talk to somebody. If somebody really is like, I'm just going to sign up for a TED Talk, like, I'm just going to do it. They're like, okay, there are those people that just go out and run marathons without training. Like, it does actually happen. It may be just a lot harder because you don't have those tools and skills. But sometimes those big, hairy, audacious goals are what make us finally do the work to overcome public speaking fear. Okay. What I would say is that you probably know. There's probably something that you have this little like, oh, I would love to do that, but I'm fearful. Like, I would love to do it, but I have to speak. You probably already know. Some examples would be posting on social media. It would be saying yes to being interviewed on a podcast, leading a committee are all really good examples of things that are just like kind of first steps. Not that posting on social media is the easiest thing to do, but you could start by just doing your stories and then work up to actually doing posts. So I think just little baby steps like this and recognize that what you're trying to do is not achieve the thing, but you're trying to practice managing the stress of it within your own body.
I like that. People used to ask me all the time when I was doing the competitive CrossFit, or we'd just bring it up and be talking about it. They're like, "How do you know what to work on?" Or "How do you know it's like, it's when the workout comes up and you don't want to do that one. That's the
Yeah,
workout.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you don't want to go run, but you're fine doing heavy back squats. You need to go run more. So it's
Yeah,
that.
like I could never look at a wall ball again and be perfectly happy. Like I'd just be like, great, my life's so good. But yes, so I probably need to do those a bit
Yeah,
more.
I mean, I'm the same. Like, I'm supposed to do this last man standing in April, this ultra marathon race with my sister and my brother.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I'm just gonna I'll run. I'll prep a little bit, but it is what it is. I just gotta.
So your runner doesn't like running.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what
Okay.
it is. Yeah. 'Cause, it's because I'm so bad at it. I don't like running, that's why I do it, so that way I don't have to worry about being the best at it 'cause, I'm not gonna be, so
Okay. Listen. So me and my running, we always joke about working so hard to be mediocre. But there's this quote from, oh my God, I can't remember the TV show. It'll come to me. But it's like, it's the story of two guys who start on the bottom and with a lot of hard work remain at the bottom and ultimately end up at the bottom. And we are like, that's us.
Yeah, I'm
We work so hard to just be blah.
yeah, I'm 100% the same, like, I did this half Ironman a couple months ago. I'm just like, "I'm never gonna be a champion Ironmaner," and I'm over here
No.
doing, like, hours and hours a day to get this stupid bike, run, and swim down, and I'll always be a mediocre Ironmaner, but that's okay, that's okay, I don't wanna be the good at it.
I know. And you know what? We're in there. We're still in there. No, it doesn't matter what place we take. We're in there and we're doing it. And the what doing fitness 6 out of 7 days a week does for me is it holds my self-esteem intact. Like it really truly is like the foundation that allows me to do all these other things. It clears my mind and it makes me feel proud of myself. And so it does all these other things that aren't being impressive in any way.
Yeah. For me, it gets me into a community. It gets me to talk to more people and like hang out with people, or else I'd just be, locked in my office trying to work on the podcast, doing the editing and because there's always more
Mhm.
stuff you can do. So for me, it gets me more social, it gets me out and talk to people and moving. And that's so valuable. It's so funny how like, I'll be like, oh, I don't have time. And the first thing I'll cut right now is like my fitness is not my top priority right now. So I'll just be like, okay, I won't work out today. And then the next day I will be more anxious. I'll be a little bit more stressed. I'll be like, what's
Mm.
going on? It's like, oh, I didn't work out yesterday. Like that stuff matters.
Well, that's the thing is, like, I feel as if I manage a lot of different things. Like, I still do broadcasting. I'm teaching at the university right now, and I have my business. I have a son. I coach a soccer team. And so you'd think that maybe spending 8 hours running a week should go. But I'm like, if I don't spend those 8 hours running, nobody wants to have to deal with me. Like and I'm gonna like everything else will collapse. So I get it. But you said something there that I want to touch on, which is feeling like getting out to speak to people. Because I do think that post pandemic, this has been really hard for younger people to start socializing again in person. Is this something that you've seen in your circles?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's kind of unique. My wife and I recently moved from Utah over to Colorado. She's going to medical school at CU. So we've been here for about a year and a half. So we didn't know anybody coming here. So I came in
Mhm.
kind of empty. And so for me, I had to push myself out there or else I would meet
Right.
nobody. I would do
Mhm.
nothing. And I'm a big nerd I like playing board games. So there's like this Facebook page, like Board Game Geek Facebook page. So I got in there and I had to put myself out there. And then I got in contact with a bunch of cool people. And then I went to the gym. And so now I have like more friends than I ever had in Utah because like I grew up there and I spent a lot of time there and I had like my core circle of like, okay, I'm in the gym all day, every day. These are my people. Versus when I
Mhm.
came here, I didn't have anybody. So I branched out in a bunch of different areas. So it's super cool now how much more unique and diverse my friendship group is. Like I've got friends that would absolutely come run an ultra with me. And then I have friends that absolutely would not. And they'd play
Mhm.
like an 8 hour board game. So for me, having to get outside my social circle has been the best thing ever. And I would recommend that to everybody. Like, because I completely agree. People are having a hard time doing it, but the value is so high if you can just get yourself to
Mhm.
do it and do these unique things to find these friends.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to touch on it is because I think that it's almost as if I should shift some of this public speaking advice that I give to be more broad to incorporate that aspect, that day-to-day social anxiety. I guess I shy away from it because I'm not a therapist or a
Mm,
psychologist, so it's not really my area of expertise, but I feel the pain of it. Although the students I teach at the university are quite young, they're in their early 20s, and I just really see how it's really difficult for them. And I think a lot of the advice or the things that we talked about here today for public speaking could apply to that too. And the number one being is that remove this idea that if it's hard for you that you're somehow bad or you've done something wrong. It's a really common problem to have, especially in this day and age.
yeah, I think there would be a ton of value in that, even for like the dating aspect. I mean, people are dating less than ever. They're talking
Mm,
to the opposite sex less than ever. It's really, I was just listening to a podcast the other day. I mean, birth rates are going down, fertility is going down, dates are going down, social interactions going down. And a lot of that is just the post-pandemic time alone, and then we have our AI companions and chatbots that are kind of
mhm.
rising, and then you just don't know the basics anymore, especially for this younger group that had to go through that without really experiencing the social world. It's like you don't know the basics, you don't know how to talk to people, and you feel like because it's hard, you shouldn't be doing it.
Yes. Okay. So this, I had two thoughts while you were speaking that are great public speaking advice that would also apply to dating. So, and I'm glad we'll get to this because there's five pillars to public speaking, and I've mentioned four and talked about four of them, but I haven't talked about the fifth, which is that it's actually not about you at all. It's about your audience and it's about serving your audience. So when you're on stage, you don't want to be thinking about yourself in any way. Like I think Chase, you do a good job when you're doing this podcast. You're like thinking about the people listening and you're thinking about me and helping me draw out information, which is exactly where your mind's supposed to be, right? So that's when you know that you've really become comfortable when you're public speaking, is when you're really dialed in and focused on the people that you're speaking to. And then the other part about it is that there's this famous quote by Henry Ford, which is, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And my version of it for public speaking is, whether you think you're okay or you think you're not okay, you're right. Because when you go up there and you're thinking like, they don't like me and I don't, whatever, and like all that negative self talk, as we've heard right at the beginning of this episode, it interferes with your ability, and people can read it in you, and then therefore it exists. But
Mhm.
if you actually just go up and go like, I'm messy and I'm fine, people see the fineness, right?
Yeah.
And so both those things apply to public, or apply to dating, which is that when you're approaching dating, is like, it's just an opportunity to meet and connect with someone and see if there's alignment, as opposed to a test of whether you're okay or you're not okay. And your job on a date is to get to know the other person and make it about them.
Mm.
So, and if I think if you can approach that with those two mindsets of, I'm here to learn about somebody and make this a good experience for them. And then the second aspect being like, and I'm also okay. No
Mhm.
matter what happens, I am perfectly fine because I know how to take care of myself. I think that improves the dating experience for everybody. I'd love to be on a, I have a partner, but if I had to date, I'd love to be on a date with someone who felt that way about
Yeah.
themselves.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you think about it and worry about it, the more you're gonna think about it and worry about it versus the vice versa. Is it just a confidence issue? Again, just to repeat kind of what we've been saying is they just need more reps, they just need more time, and they need more comfort in their own skin?
Yeah. The other thing about it is that it's is like, just because you feel nervous doesn't mean you're not confident, or it doesn't mean that you're not okay. Like, this is not, listen, like back when I was dating, I went on dates where I wasn't nervous at all. And I was like, why am I even going? Right? Nervousness is just a sign that you care. And so I think that that's really good. And honestly, more experience managing and being fine with rejection will also make it easier to just be really calm about um to be really calm when you're in that type of situation, I think, as a non-dating expert.
For me, and just a tangent here, and I'm curious your thoughts on it. There's been like an extreme cancel culture in the world lately. 2020, there's been kind of crazy. Like, you need to watch what you say. You need to make sure. For me, particularly, like, I started a podcast. I'm public. It's me
Mhm.
talking.
Yeah.
When I initially started, I was like, I am so worried about what I say is going to come off stupid or somebody's going to take it the wrong way, and I have to make sure it's exactly the way I intended it. And so what that leads me to do is like over articulate. I say the same
Mhm.
thing in 9 different ways to try and make sure my point gets taken the right way versus just kind of speaking and letting my intention come through and let people know me and know what I mean or what I'm saying versus trying
Mhm.
to over articulate the point to death that nobody understands it.
Yeah. Uh, that's really hard. Because also in some ways, I definitely think some people have gotten canceled that deserve to be deplatformed and that
Fair
did
enough.
do or say
Yeah.
hurtful things. This is sound bites are really tricky. They're like extremely tricky, and it makes sense to me that you would be concerned about that. I think I would just you can if you want to feel better about it and help clear your mind, I would just ask myself, am I a bigot? Do I want to minimize people? Do I desire to be mean? Do I desire to make people lesser than me? And if the answer to those things is no, then I think you're going to be okay. And you could also have a plan for if you do say something where maybe you discover you lacked some knowledge and somebody brought it to your attention. How am I going to deal with that? Or a plan for if you are misunderstood, how are you going to respond? And then you know what you're going to do, as opposed to worrying that it may happen and feeling like that would be the end of all things, right?
Yeah.
But I just want to say I understand you. I often feel like like one huge thing for me is like women's rights and standing up for women in my community. But I often don't do it online because I just feel like it can be so misunderstood because it's too soundbitey. And I prefer to have people, um, like I think they say like called in when you have those conversations. Like sometimes I just feel like I want to be able to explain things in paragraphs, whereas nobody has
Mm.
time for that online. So I hear it. I have that hesitancy too.
All part of the game, I guess. You just got to be comfortable in who you are as a person, and the people who you actually care about know who you are and what you think and how you believe.
Yeah, and I think making the changes that you want to see in your own home community are also really important and supporting things that you really believe in. I think that's one of the best things you can do. There's a quote from Stephen Cope that's like something about if we all just take care of our own corner of the world, everything would be okay. And so making sure that you're participating in those things. Yeah.
I want to kind of get your opinion on something before we move on to
That was
wrapping this
already,
up.
I feel like, the hardest question I could
Yeah,
deal with. So what
right. No, no. This one's not deep. Uh, if you were sitting in an audience and you were listening to somebody speak, how long does it take you to determine if they're a good speaker or not? And what are those things that you're looking at?
Oh, okay. I honestly would probably know in the first few seconds. But the thing is, okay, but then now there's a huge caveat, which is that I like all types of speakers. And I don't mind nervous speakers who are sincere.
Mm.
And I also like nervous speakers who are um not great. I feel a lot of compassion for them. I know how hard it is and I know what they're going through when they're up there. So the speakers that I don't like are the speakers that are fine taking up everybody's time and attention without consideration of the effort that the audience has to put in. People that go overtime or go on for too long or make things about them. I MC a lot of weddings, and I'll tell you, I'm a judgmental wedding MCers that make the show about the MC. So, but yes, I can tell right away because they will come on stage, and I try to do this when I speak, and it is, I will make you comfortable in my presence. So I will show you with my voice and my gestures and my body language that you're going to be okay with me, that I feel just fine with you looking at me. It doesn't affect me at all. And now I'm going to transfer over some knowledge to you or some ideas to you.
I have a tradition on this podcast where I ask the guests two closing questions. The first,
Okay.
the first being, who do you think I should speak to next and why? And then the second is, what would be a book you most recommend?
Dang. I wish I'd prepared for this. I should have listened all the way to the end. I listened to like the beginnings of a whole bunch of episodes. There's just too many people. And I feel like you got Dr. Chris Winter on your podcast. I feel like you can go high. How about Lauren Fleshman? Do you know her?
I don't.
She's a track star from the United States. She wrote this really good book called Good for a Girl. I'm going to recommend another book too. Um, and I just really like her ideas. She's one of the most decorated track athletes that didn't go to the Olympics. But I think she's done some really cool things. And as a runner, I think you might like it. She doesn't live in, I don't think it's Colorado, but it's somewhere nearby.
Mm.
All you like slightly mountainous running
Yeah.
areas. Maybe it's Oregon or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's something I would love to talk to her. I'll have to reach
Yeah,
out.
and I think she'd be up for it. Okay. So then the book I would recommend, one of my favorites is Mind Magic by Dr. James Dottie. Like if you're talking about wanting to figure out how you think about yourself and how you think about yourself affects how you behave and what you see in the world. Like this is the like you can see I got like things bookmarked. Like this is the neuroscience of it.
Mm.
Um, and what I love about him is his message for the world was so beautiful. Like he does teach manifestation essentially, but in an effort to make people kinder and to make the world a better place. Unfortunately, he passed away this summer. And like when I found out he died, I actually felt like someone that I
Mm.
loved and cared for passed away. It still makes me sad because I think he was one of the best voices that we've had as a leader in a long time.
What was the book you mentioned earlier too about? being
Oh, good
comfortable in.
for
Yeah.
oh, to be comfortable, How to Be Yourself by Dr.
Yeah.
Ellen Hendrickson.
Okay. I'm gonna have all these linked so people can check them out.
I
I
should send you
asked.
I have a whole list.
Well,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, with this being a question at the end of my episodes, I can't read as fast as I can get people on to ask
Yeah.
questions. So my list is infinitely long at this point. It's always, and it's just getting longer, but that's a good problem to have. Where can people find you? Where can they get more? Where can they work with you?
I mean, the best place is on Instagram at deliver.your.best. And I also post really frequently on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Well, Heather, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for bearing with the technical difficulties. I actually think it served the purpose of the podcast better. I think it
Good.
made it better. So that's
Great.
great. Uh, one last thing. What was the most important thing that we should have talked about that we didn't talk about that we can talk about next time?
Oh man. This is like I feel like you just throw all the hard ones at me at the end here. Um I think we touched on it in a sense, and in a way was the overarching theme of this conversation is that all of this is just a journey. So uh, there is no achieving in public speaking as the same sense as that there's no achieving ultimately in life is like you're just going to continue to grow and get better and work on it and that is where the value lies.
Uh, I completely agree. Like, I recently was listening and I wrote about it. You wouldn't expect to join or play a video game and have a level that has like no challenges. It's just like an empty level. You have nothing to do. And yeah, why do we expect like one day we're gonna hit a point of our life where there's nothing? Like it's all just smooth sailing. We have everything figured out. And yet I still think that. Like I still wake up one day and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get there. Even though logically I'm just like, hey man, just enjoy the
Yeah,
journey.
or
Just have
something must
fun.
be wrong with me because I'm still having problems. Like things are
Right.
still happening to me. Yes, I hear that.
Well, Heather, again, thank you so much for your time. This was such a fun conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. You're doing a great job. You should be really proud of yourself. You're doing great.
Thank you.
You're gonna be the next Rich Roll. It's gonna be amazing.
That would be somebody who I could definitely aspire to be. He's very good at what he does. He's a
Oh,
great
it's
conversationalist.
yeah, he's my vision board when once I write my book and help millions of people.
Amazing.
I'll get
He's a
to talk
vision
to
board for
Rich.
my hair. I want to be like
Just go vegan, man. That's all it is. Yeah.
That's all it is. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, it was great, Chase.